Hi, Simon Jarrett here for Kingsley Amplifiers, and in this video I'm going to be discussing the different preamplifier pedals that we offer. I made a previous video entitled Valve Preamps for Electric Guitar, What Are They All About? And in that first video I discussed preamplifiers in general and what some of their applications are for guitar players. So today I'd like to discuss the different preamplifier pedals that Kingsley offers. First thing I should say is that we offer a variety of valve or tube pedals, and many of them are designed to be able to work in just the same way as any other guitar type effects pedal, so they go straight into the front of an amplifier. On the other hand, we also offer a range of preamplifiers, and these all say preamp or preamplifier on them. And these are true preamps in that they can push a power amplifier directly. You can use them to replace a preamplifier that you might find within a guitar amplifier, and you can use them for recording purposes. So, the first preamplifier I'd like to talk about is the Squire, which came out several years ago, and the first model was loosely based upon the Dumble Overdrive Clean channel. It's a simplified variation of that circuit with controls for volume, treble and bass. Then you have a three-way mode switch which gives you a darker mode, a normal mode and a brighter mode. So after I started to make the Squire, I got requests from some people for a black face preamp, and I used the Squire enclosure to design that circuit as well. And so then I came out with this second preamplifier called the Squire BF, BF for blackface. And the Squire BF and the Squire D sound very similar. Basically the difference is that the blackface variation has more of a scoop mid-range, and the bass comes on a little quicker on the dial and is voiced a bit lower. But in a nutshell, you can actually dial these two preamps to sound very much the same, depending on the settings of the EQ. They're both clean preamps, so they're designed for clean tones, and they make great clean foundation tones to run other pedals into. If you crank the volume, they get louder, but they don't break up. They will break up if you have a very hot guitar or if you push the input with a high output pedal. But on their own, they're very clean pedals. Now I do also offer the Squire Tb, and Tb stands for top boost. So this preamplifier is designed after the Vox AC30 top boost preamplifier. And on that one, it will break up when you raise the volume around halfway or higher. So this one stays clean at lower volumes and gets gradually a little bit dirtier, giving you mild amp-like breakup. So after the Squire, I came out with some other pedals, but the most recent preamplifier pedal that I have is called the Maiden. And the Maiden is sort of a development of the Squire. So it's based on the same circuits, but it has a more comprehensive feature set. First of all, we get a mid-range control. On the Maiden D, if you pull the mid-range control, you get a mid-boost as well. And what that does is it lowers the frequency of the treble part, so that as you raise the treble, rather than raising actual treble frequencies, you're really raising mids and high mids for a very fat sound. On the Maiden BF, you have the same feature, but it's actually located on the bass pot, so you pull the bass pot. There's a three-way mode switch for normal, bright 1 and bright 2, so we don't have the treble roll-off mode that the Squire has. Most of the reason that I didn't incorporate that mode is because I wanted more treble on tap, so treble 2 gives a lot of treble if you want it, but also because the EQ on this has more range and effect, so effectively you don't need the treble roll-off mode for this to sound great into the front end of a bright amp, for example. It'll still work well. Then we have individual volume and master volume controls. Having a volume control and a master volume is nice because you can set pristine clean tones, and you can also dial in some mild compression and mild amp gritty style old school cranked up Fender amp sort of tones, even at low volumes. So that's the Maiden D and the Maiden BF, which I also offer for the Maiden. Now on the website I don't have a Maiden Tb, the top boost variation, but I have actually made several of those and they work really well as well. The reason I don't have them on my website is because initially I thought, well, the Maiden sort of has quite a few features and gets kind of a little bit far away from the feature set of a traditional Vox AC30 top boost. But in practice, when you add some of these features to a top boost circuit, it actually works really well. So that's a nice variation on the AC30 top boost preamplifier. Now both of these preamps will work in conjunction with the EQ lift boost pedal. Now actually I should mention that all Maidens work with the EQ lift boost, but only Squires which were manufactured after April 2017 work with this EQ lift boost. So the EQ lift boost, what it does is it removes the EQ, the tone stack, from the preamplifier that you're running into it. So you take the output of the Maiden or the Squire and you use a TRS, a tip ring sleeve cable, to connect into the input of the EQ lift, and then when you activate it you can remove the tone controls from the Squire or the Maiden. Now when you remove the tone stack on these pedals you get a very large volume boost, and also you get a flatter frequency response with more mid-range. So the level control on the EQ lift gives you no EQ lift at minimum settings, and then the EQ is gradually lifted out of the circuit, giving you more corresponding volume boost, and at maximum level you get maximum volume boost and EQ lifting. So at this setting the EQ controls on your preamplifier do virtually nothing. This becomes a very fat, thick sound, so I included a three-way lows switch which tailors the bottom end and the lower mids. So the next pedal I'll talk about is the Page DS. Now first of all I should say that I also offer the Page pedal, the regular Page. The regular Page came out first, and that pedal is not a preamplifier and is designed to go into the front of an amp just like any boost or overdrive pedal might. Now when I designed the Page DS, what I was doing is I was designing the overdrive circuit from a Dumble ODS style preamplifier. So if you have, for example, a Maiden D or a Squire D, you have a clean channel based on the Dumble ODS, and so now here is the overdrive channel. Now the way the architecture works in these circuits is you look at an ODS preamp, the clean channel gives you a clean tone, and then when you activate the overdrive channel you haven't turned off the clean channel stays on and cascades into the overdrive circuitry. So that's what we have here. You have your clean channel which cascades into the overdrive channel. So same architecture as in the ODS preamp. So we've got controls for gain, volume and tone, and we've got three-way mini switches for fine-tuning the low end and the high end response. Now another word about the Page DS is this is the only one of the preamplifier style pedals that doesn't say preamplifier on it, it says tube boost. If you use the Page DS on its own, it doesn't really work very well as a preamplifier. It's not really designed for that. It's designed to go with a clean preamplifier. If you were to take this pedal and use it on its own into a power amplifier, it would sound a little bit dark and muffled and wouldn't have as much gain as you would expect. So having a clean preamplifier first really helps the Page DS get that ODS style overdrive and tone. Now if you have the EQ lift boost pedal in conjunction with these two pedals, well then the EQ lift boost can be used to push the Page DS harder. So you'd come out of the Maiden into your EQ lift boost and out of the EQ lift boost into the Page DS, essentially giving you a clean tone, an overdrive tone and a pushed or more saturated overdrive tone for lead playing. So that's it for my single function preamplifiers. The Juggler is a two function preamplifier and is essentially sort of like having a Maiden D and a Page DS in one enclosure with a simplified feature set. So you get a clean channel and you get a simple overdrive channel. Now like the Squire, any Juggler made after April 2017 will also work with the EQ lift boost. So if you have an older Juggler or Squire, they won't work with that pedal. So the Juggler has a clean channel overdrive channel, two 12AX7s, and if you want to save a little bit of real estate on your pedal board and for slightly less money, this makes a nice alternative to, say, a Maiden and a Page DS. So the last preamplifier pedal I'll talk about today is the Constable, and the Constable is designed after a Plexi style preamplifier. So we're talking classic Marshall 4-input Plexi amplifier design here. So the traditional Plexi preamp has controls for volume 1, volume 2, treble, middle and bass, and they're all on the Constable. Now the amplifier also has a presence control, but the presence control is actually part of the power amp, not the preamp. So consequently you won't find a presence control on the Constable. You do get a master volume, however. Now the volume 1 and volume 2 work just like the volume 1 and volume 2 on the amplifier. So the volume 1 is the brighter of the two, more cutting sound, and volume 2 is darker. So you can actually combine these two volumes. That's a trick that guitar players do with Plexi amps sometimes. They use a Y jumper cable to connect the two channels together. So you can do that internally with the Constable. So about Plexi style sounds in general, these days a lot of people associate Plexi with sort of a hard-edged kind of high-gain rock sound. But actually a real Plexi style circuit is not really a high-gain circuit at all. Plexi amps do get great rock tones, but in order to get overdrive, they make use of the preamplifier's hot output, which then drives the power amplifier, and the power amplifier does a large part of the overdriving itself. Specifically the phase inverter tube within the power amplifier clips a lot. So the Constable, just like in the amplifier, only provides clean tones or mild overdrive on its own. It has a very hot output on tap though, so if you turn up the master volume, that will be able to push a power amp into overdrive. Now sometimes that's a nice way to do it. Other times you might not want to have a really hot output coming out of your preamp. So in that case, turn down the master, in which case this just becomes a mild to medium gain device at maximum, and then you can use other pedals, like maybe a clean booster or an overdrive unit, to push the Constable. And even though you'll be relying on another pedal to help develop gain from the Constable, the tone will be very much along the lines of a Plexi amplifier. So this is a good way to do it. And this brings me to the last part that I'd like to talk about in this video, which is how do you patch in these preamplifiers with effects? So let's say you've got a pedal board with traditional guitar effects pedals. Where do you put the preamp? So if you have a preamplifier, what you can typically do is place it last in line, especially if you're going for clean tones from the preamp itself. So if you've got maybe a Maiden or a Squire, you could run all of your pedals into those preamps, and then from the preamp you would then go out into your power amplifier or your recording device. Now if you're using the preamp to develop overdrive itself, well, in that scenario you want to think about where to put certain effects, specifically delay and reverb. So let's say, for example, if you're using the Juggler and you're on the overdrive channel, well, you might want to put delay and reverb after the overdrive. Just like on a traditional pedal board, we usually put delay and reverb type effects after overdrive. Some guitar players don't do it this way, but the vast majority do place their effects in that way. So what we have is you would have your regular pedals going into the Juggler, for example. Then out of the Juggler you would go into a delay and a reverb pedal, and then from those pedals you would go out into your power amp or into your recording device. So in that way we get time-based effects after preamp generated overdrive. You can think of this setup in the same way as putting effects pedals in an effects loop on an amplifier, for example, where the effects are then placed after the preamplifier generated overdrive within the amplifier. The only thing to be aware of in this scenario is that if you run the output of the pedal too hot, you could potentially overdrive the input of any subsequent effects, like your delay and reverb. So you can easily determine where that needs to be by listening, and the output of these devices works very well both with line level effects but also with guitar level effects. So if you're going to use, say, a typical Boss delay unit, you can plug these right into it and just keep the master at a level that doesn't clip the input of your boss delay. In particular, this is an important conversation to have with the Constable, because the Constable really has a very hot output on tap, and also because the classic Plexi amplifier derives its overdrive from the output of the preamp pushing the power amp. So let's say you want to put delay and reverb after the Constable. What'll happen? Well, if you want to drive your power amp hard, effectively when you turn up the master volume, you'll not only be driving your power amp hard, but you'll be driving the input of the delay and reverb unit hard into clipping. So really that's not the greatest way to go. So in this scenario, if you want to have effects after the Constable, the best thing is to run the master low and then use other pedals or other devices to push the input of the Constable into higher gain. That way you can keep a check on the output level such that you don't overdrive your delay and reverb. Alright, well, I've probably forgotten some things, but I'm sure I'll get questions. But hopefully that gives a general overview of the preamplifiers that we currently offer. Thanks very much.